Certain forms of self-sufficiency and exchange are practiced in every society, but their relevance is varying with very extreme values. Self-sufficiency is more marked in agrarian societies than in others, as meeting the needs of the host is more probable in them than in other types of societies. This is true for most part of Africa, south of the Sahara, where agrarian producers were the majority in the society at the time when their states became independent, but existed within a network of international trade relations as a heritage of a colonial past. This period was relatively short in the scale of history, but it was very important in transforming many African societies. It created a social category which preserved a considerable measure of autonomy of tribal cultivators, together with many elements of pre-colonial agriculture, though intertwined with challenges and opportunities of commercial farming. This category is often called peasant, and the process that created it is called peasantization. In contrast to some countries, first of all to the southern neighbor Tanzania, which tried to implement certain features of socialist systems existing in Europe and Asia, the African socialism in Kenya meant something different. The expression covered a state capitalism indeed. It was an emphasis on the preservation of moral values of African traditions, together with Africanization of land and among the operators of the economy, combined with state control and planification on the one hand, but also with the acceptance of private property, accumulation of wealth, and foreign investments, if these are used in the interest of the Kenyan society, on the other hand. This strategy not only helped to survive a market economy, but even successfully enhanced it with extending the production of cash crops, coffee, tea, mainly for export and for supplying tourism within Kenya.
Sorry to intervene, Mihály. I just have a question that I'm sharing the screen, your presentation.
Yes.
And so how shall I do that with the pictures? So
I shall tell you when I need the picture.
Oh, okay. So not now.
So the result was a massive economic development for 2 decades from 1964, but the pace of development broke for a couple of years. In 1948, Kenya suffered a severe drought, causing a large national food deficit, which was unusual in the country. The government tackled the problem, but it had its costs. The coffee production and consequently the export decreased with more than 30% in the years subsequent to the collapse of the International Coffee Agreement in 1989. There was a recovery of the economy in the country from the end of the 1990s with a rapid growth of the GDP. To sum up, the nominal per capita GDP increased approximately 18 times from 1964 to 2020. It is about $2,300 per capita today, while the population grew from 9 million in 1964 to 53 million in 2020. But the majority of the people works in the agriculture or animal husbandry even today. I had the opportunity to travel all over Kenya as a member of the Hungarian scientific expedition to Africa in 1988 and carry out fieldwork in a Kikuyu village, Rititi Nyeri district in 1993 and 1995. That means I was in the country in its less prosperous years. It was just the great decrease of the coffee production that made me possible to do fieldwork within the research program of the Institut Français de Recherche en Afrique, Nairobi, for clarifying the reasons of the decay of coffee production. I had the chance to live in the family of my interpreter, Richard Muriyuki Matenge, who was also a real research assistant and a friend. In order to understand what happened with the coffee, I studied individual strategies of agrarian producers, taking into account the size of the holding, the property relations, products, the portion of coffee plant within the holding, the division of labor, the knowledge of agricultural technologies and marketing of products, including the payment for the coffee, sources of incomes, the size and the composition of the family, the educational level of its members, their occupations and plans for the future. In addition to personal talks, I distributed a questionnaire with the help of teachers in Retiti and in its neighborhood and in Mukurveini, a market center circa 20 kilometers from Retiti, for increasing the amount of information. From 217 questionnaires, I got back 164, which I think was a very good proportion. As the coffee business has been organized by cooperatives, I discussed with clerks in their offices in Karatina and Mukurveini. My knowledge is based on these experiences and data. Concerning the socioeconomic position of the Kikuyu agrarian producers, let us see the human factor first. The questionnaire revealed that the agrarian producers are fairly well educated. It is usual in an agrarian society that children learn the important techniques in their childhood from other members of the family. In addition, to this, in Kenya, the people under 50 finished an elementary school of 8 years, where they also learned the two state languages, English and Kikuyu. Moreover, from the questionnaire, it became clear that in 2/3 of the families and in 1/3 of the families, at least one boy or one girl finished also a middle level school, where the teaching language is English. During my stay in the village, there were 4 persons who studied at various universities, and the village had about 800 inhabitants. Secondly, the question of property in land. A European type of private property for the Africans was introduced in the central and western highland parts of Kenya during and after the Mau Mau uprising of the Kikuyu, in order to create a stratum of African farmers with 10 hectares holdings who would support the British rule. This legislation was extended and implemented in the independent Kenya, but many features of the customary law survived. And this has an importance because many people had not enough money to register properly their land titles in the new state system. The holdings are small. Their range was between 0.02 and 8.5 hectares. The average was 1.36 hectares per family and 0.24 hectares per capita. And now how they use the land. And here I ask the first picture. Sorry, Dora. The first, yeah.
Can you hear it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay.
Well, this is a territory of horticulture. The essence of horticulture is that the various plants are cultivated side by side or even intercropped, and the cultivation is made with manual labor. Now let me see the next picture. Next picture, please. Sorry, yes. Then there is one part of the holding which is separated from the others. This is where the coffee trees are planted, but it is separated only theoretically because, as we shall see, sometimes it was also used with intercropping methods. Formerly, the Kikuyu had large herds of cattle, but nowadays it is usual that they have 1-2 cows in a household. Let me see the next picture. And these are, as you see, very, very thin, and they give very little amount of milk, 5-6 liters in a day, though they are of hybrids. This one is a Holstein Fries, for example. The reason is that they don't have enough fodder on their holdings, and they are trying to bring fodder from a greater distance, as you can see it on the next picture. An old woman is bringing napier grass for the cattle. If they would like to eat meat, see the next picture, please. Well, before going into the meat question, so a large part of the territory nowadays are used by the coffee factories. Here you see a coffee factory where the coffee beans are dried. And now let me see how the meat is produced at home. Next picture, please. Usually they have a sheep in the household, and during the night it is kept in the kitchen. They say that the meat is better if it is smoked in life, but practically the reason is that they try to check stealing of the cows. But eating cows is a rarity. It happens at greater social events. During the 2 months when I was in the village, I had twice meat in the family. I ate with them what they used to eat. The staple food is maize nowadays in the Kikuyu territory. Despite these handicaps, some farmers specialized for milk production. They have more cows and sell the milk through the same cooperative which serves the coffee producers too. Each family intends to have coffee fields. This is very important. But the effectivity of the cultivation is very varying. A coffee tree brings about 10 kilograms in a year if it is well kept, but the average was 3 kilograms in my questionnaire. The best result was, however, 40 kilograms on a tree in a garden where only a few coffee trees stood. The people knew all the technical requirements, weed controls, chemicals, pesticides, but they did not apply them when the coffee prices were low. As there was a state prohibition on cutting out the coffee trees, the territory was used. As I mentioned, intercropping or even grazing between the trees were the ways as the territory was used. When these solutions promised a greater income or an avoidance of shortage of food. As 1 kilogram coffee, as 1 kilogram maize in maize flour in 1993 was 17.51 shillings, and this was higher than the amount what a producer got for 1 kilogram coffee in the 1992-1993 coffee year. It is understandable that producing something other was advisable. Calculation was always present. People sold everything that they were able to sell. Let me see the picture 8. As you see, a man is starting to sell very small amounts from his products. But the real scenes of selling and buying are the great markets. Next picture, please. Here you see the Karatina market. Here is a shop of a smith. And the Kikuyu don't eat poultry. It is not advisable for women, and therefore it is a rarity, but you can see even a poultry on the market. The theoretically most important cash crop, the coffee, is marketed through a cooperative. The cooperative gave the coffee tree, which became the property of a woman usually. It has the coffee factory. Its bank gives loans with a high interest rate for buying chemicals. In the factory, the coffee is evaluated in its raw cherry form when it is brought in, skinned and dried, then transported into the coffee mill where it is evaluated again. From there, it is sent to coffee auctions. This is a method of marketing through the Coffee Board of Kenya. This long process cannot be followed by the producer, and the price of his coffee is given in 4 parts. The final payment is less than the marketed price because many deductions are involved. Almost no one knew exactly the steps of marketing from the transportation into the factory to its final marketing and the formation of the price at the end. I don't go into the detailed analysis of individual cases this time. It is sufficient to say that poor families had to focus on producing more for self-subsistence and less for the market, or had to find other incomes from other activities like becoming construction workers. Richer families were able to market more and even invest into other enterprises. I mentioned here 2 cases and should like to show just one picture about a relatively rich man who has a Nissan Urban car. Next picture, please. But what is the real proof that he's rich? That he was able to organize a real wedding for her bride and himself. And this is a rarity. Most people are unable to get a real wedding. How can we interpret these conditions? I think that Marx comment on the existence of intermediate forms, Zwitterformen, in the slow and long process of subordination of agrarian production to the rule of the market is revealing. In these forms, surplus labor is not extorted by direct compulsion from the producer, nor the producer himself, yet formally subjected to capital, that his capital has not yet acquired the direct control of the labor process. By the side of independent producers who carry on their handicrafts and agriculture in the traditional old-fashioned way, there stands the usurer or the merchant with his capital feeding on them. The predominance in a society of this form of exploitation excludes the capitalist mode of production, what may serve as a transition to it, he writes. In the discussed Kikuyu case, it is not very easy to define the usurer or the merchant. The cooperative, with its more than 8,000 members in Karatina, is an alienated organization, but all those who got coffee trees from the cooperative had also shares in it. That part of the income of the coffee production, which is not given back to the producer at the price of their coffee, is shared between the Kenyan state, the cooperatives, and foreign businessmen who arrange the auctions and bought of the coffee. The cooperatives have costs of functioning. The income of the state is redistributed through many channels for maintaining the administration of the country, for the school system, and in many other forms by which the state improved the living conditions. But a large part of the income from coffee is realized as profit by the auctioneers and representatives of the international coffee business when they sell their coffee on markets abroad. In the eyes of the producers in Retiti, the operators of the economy are distant and powerful outsiders. In the eyes of the analyst, they represent the state-controlled market economy, which define the framework in which the smallholder in reality can make decisions according to the needs of the family.
1 minute left.
Yes, there are not many. Demands of the social bonds and ceremonial life and of existence in a modern state where the school fee of charge, where the school is free of charge on the elementary level, but a school dress should be bought. It is worth of applying Polanyi's ideas about a substantive understanding of economic activity and the forms of integration intertwined for having an overview of the situation, but it is not sufficient. For understanding the problem of the smallholder, it is worth to use the theory of Pierre Bourdieu about 3 forms of capital, material, social, and cultural, as the direction of the transformation is toward capitalism in the Kenyan case, among the given historical circumstances. And these forms of capital are rarely together in the desired quantity and quality in most households in the village. And this lack of means promotes a survival of an intermediate form. I had no opportunity to continue this research since 1995 in Kenya, but I do not know about similar research on the Central Highlands area since then. I can't say with certainty that the conditions remain the same, but an analysis from Kericho, Western Kenya, shows that the large proportion of smallholder farmers in Kenya makes probable, despite a real economic wonder of Kenya in the last decade, that smallholders have to keep in mind the strategy of self-sustenance when they make decisions about the proper use of their farms. Thank you.